right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Paradigm Shifting Books. Today's episode is one of the episodes we've done previously, which is, we're calling it just a one principle episode, where we're basically going to take one principle or big idea from one of the books that we've reviewed and just kind of hone in and focus on that particular principle. Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube or see a clip, you're going to see me in a really different setting. Also Britain as well. So I'm actually up in Montana this weekend. It was kind of a last minute decision to come up here, but Britt and I had already previously decided we were going to record together. So rather than move the recording, I said, you know what, we're just going to do it. So I'm in like 35-degree weather, and the reason why I've got a beanie and a jacket on. So that explains mine. And then Britain is recording his right after practice. So
I wish I was in Montana. So
yeah, so we're coming at you in a real setting. But the principle we wanted to review today with everyone, which is one that has been personally impactful in my own life, is from Greg McKeown. So obviously we reviewed his book Essentialism recently. And this right here, you can see on the screen if you're watching, is it's called the Essentialism Planner. Now, I'm not saying anyone has to buy this, but it's kind of like a companion book to Essentialism. And there's a method that Greg came up with called the 1-2-3 method. And that's basically what we're going to kind of hone in on today. It's basically a practical way to simplify our priorities in an overwhelming world. So one of the things Greg said, and this is a quote from Essentialism, is he says, the basic value proposition of Essentialism is only once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all, to stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter. And his attempt with this Essentialism Planner and the 1-2-3 method is basically daily practice that you can do to basically try and focus on your highest priority. So I'm going to actually read his explanation from this book, just a short paragraph or two on how he describes the 1-2-3 method. Do you ever feel like life is living you instead of you living it? Often life seems like a giant game of reaction, requiring you to jump from one task to another while still trying to achieve what's important. And somehow we believe if we can just optimize our schedule, cut out downtime, and multitask, we can get it all done. But the truth is, a juggling act none of us can keep up with. The answer, paradoxically, doesn't lie in figuring out how to do more things in less time. It lies in figuring out how to do fewer things better. When you can clearly see and prioritize the many things in your life, you can begin to build a rhythm that gives you control and order, allowing you to live a life you design. The 1-2-3 method helps you answer the question, now what? It is a daily method you can use to take back control of your day and make this complex dance between the urgent and the essential easier to navigate. It's simple on the surface, but profound in its impact. Then he says, in this planner, you use this daily method. So here's the daily method. 1 stands for one essential project and work on it for 3 hours. This is today's priority. The 2 is 2 urgent and essential tasks that must get done to keep you from falling behind. And the 3 is for 3 maintenance items to complete, to stay organized and prevent problems. So again, it's simple on its surface. We're going to get into like a few examples of how we do this, but Brett, curious your thoughts, especially from like a professional athlete's perspective, how has the 1-2-3 method impacted you? How do you feel like it relates to sports?
Yeah. Well, we've said on this podcast before, part of the reason why we like to relate things to sports is because it's almost like a simplified version of life. I think a professional athlete's job, for as crazy and complex as it is, it's also remarkably simple because you're just playing a sport. And so you wake up and you have your routine to keep your body in the best possible shape, all that things to perform. So it's kind of like an allegory for life. So how this applies is just the fact that the schedule for a professional athlete is naturally built around kind of the 1-2-3 method. Because if you think about it, in the NFL, we have a game every week. So you have to prioritize things on different days. And we kind of naturally live that 1-2-3 method. So if you were to say one essential thing that you have to get done this day, no matter what, you have to get this done, would simply be practice. You have to get some form of practice or walkthrough done. You have to to walk through those plays and get the game plan in for the week. And if you go two, so the next method is two, what is urgent and important, but it's not necessarily like if you don't get it done that day, you've failed, but is would be film study, right? Because it is timely. There is a timeline for it. You have to watch the film on the opponent. That's built into our day as well. And then three are the maintenance tasks. This is what Greg McKeown talks about, is they are important, but they're not quite as urgent. But if you don't do them, it starts to feel like clutter builds up in your life, or you're falling behind on a lot of things. And so that would be lifting, recovery, nutrition, these daily habits, these things that are still very important, but not quite as urgent. And you can go a few days and you don't feel like you're missing out on too much. But if you go more than a week, you realize how far behind you've fallen. So I would say it's just for sports, it's our schedule is naturally built out for us around this 1, 2, 3 method. In life, I feel like it's a lot harder because we want to say yes to everything, right?
Right.
Everything, how, there's so much gray area in life, and we want to say yes to everything. And anyway, so I'm glad I don't have to make all those decisions for my schedule.
No, that's great. Like you said, Brett, one of the things I love about sports in your position is there's so many comparisons to sports that you can apply to life. I think one time you said something around the idea that football is not life, but football is like life, or something. I can't
Yeah.
remember. So what? So I want to share how I've used the 1, 2, 3 method. And one thing I want to address is, when Greg McKeown shared this, I've listened to a few podcasts of Greg talking about this, and I've seen some comments in the chats where people have been like, "Oh, this model is just it's too simple. Like they don't realize the reality of day-to-day life, like working in like a corporate America job and how chaotic and crazy it is." And so, Greg is out of touch and doesn't quite realize that this method is just too simple. And I've thought about that. And I actually think, though, that simplicity beats complexity in a lot of times, in a lot of areas of life. And in particular, with something like this, that I know what it's like working in modern corporate America when you have email and Slack channels and Zoom, and you have like 8 to 10 different apps that are constantly pinging you. You get notifications daily. So I actually think that something like this, a 1, 2, 3 method that you have this daily ritual you do in the morning, has so much power because it combats basically the craziness that we live in right now, and the chaotic nature of everything. So if you don't do something like this, and if you're not intentional in the morning when you plan your day, then your day will absolutely be hijacked by other people. So yes, it is a very simple method for sure, but I believe there's so much power in it because it does allow you. It's kind of like what Greg said in his book: if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And this is like a practical daily way to do it. So two examples for me, and then we'll wrap up here. So this would be an example from the past week for me on like a work day of how I applied the 1, 2, 3 method. So on a work day this last week, my one essential project was to do deep work on an upcoming conference that we had. So I blocked out a 2-hour block of time. That it wasn't like this was not a project that had a due date or anything like that, but I had to. I've got to prep for this conference that's months in the future. But if I don't do work on it now, then it's going to be one of those things that creeps up on you last second. So that was my essential project for the day: 2 hours of deep work on an upcoming conference. The two urgent and essential tasks was, first, I was finalizing a marketing plan for a new book launch. And then the second was one-on-one meetings with my team. So those were like the urgent and essential tasks. And then the three maintenance items was, I put an email scan. So just scanning through email. I needed to ship a book, like literally physically go to a store and ship a book. And then the third was review my calendar with my wife, Emily. So again, in that day, these were not the only tasks that I completed that day. Like obviously, I don't think this is what Greg is saying. It's like these are the only things you do in that day with the 1, 2, 3 method. But what it does do is, again, it gives you that intentionality in your day and say, I am committing to do these tasks. And yes, there's going to be other things that pop up, but I am being very intentional about how I'm going to spend my day. So that was a workday example for me. And then I wanted to take today as an example. So today's a Saturday. Again, I'm on a short trip with my kids. So my number one priority for the day, my essential task is to be present with my kids. That's number one. The two urgent and essential tasks was number one, outline this podcast that Britt and I were going to record. And then the second one was record this podcast, which we're doing right now. And then the three maintenance items is today, it's a Saturday, I only picked two. One was I need to do a quick email scan. And the second one is I have a couple things for my church that I need to help with, some like maintenance items with the church. So again, those aren't the only things I'm going to be doing today, but what it has done is it helped me start my day with intention and also being, okay, what's my number one priority today? It's to be present with my kids. That is the number one thing for this Saturday. And you might say, well, yeah, that's obvious. Like that's, of course, these are obvious things. But I do believe that there's real power in actually sitting down and being intentional on a day-to-day basis for something like this. Even if the answers seem obvious, I really think there's a power. I don't know. What do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I mean, I just like how Greg puts it in the book where he says that one essential thing, what you're asking yourself is, if I get this done today, it will be a successful day. And like you said, I know that can be an oversimplification, but I do think at times there is one task, maybe two tasks where it's like, if I get this done when I lay my head down at night, I feel like I will had a successful day. I think the one thing that came to my mind is, when I do this is when we go to Disneyland. When we go to Disneyland, we sit down the night before and we say, okay, if we make it to Guardians of the Galaxy, or if we make it to Splash Mountain, we will be happy, right? And then the urgent things is like, okay, but then if we also make it to Pirates and this, then great, that's cherry on top, all those things. But as long as we make it to California Screaming and Splash Mountain, it will be a successful day. And so it's funny how, even for non-work days, you feel like you apply this method.
100%. So I'll just leave. I think my final thing that I'll say is we've talked about this before, but from the book Atomic Habits, where James Clear talks about you do not rise to the level of your goals, but fall to the level of your systems. I think that's such a powerful saying. And I think that this, in a sense, this 1, 2, 3 method, and again, this is one that you can adapt for your own life. But I think, in a sense, this is like a daily system that you put in place that if you're having a bad day or things aren't going as planned, that you will basically fall to the level of your system. So if you implement some kind of intentional planning system like this in the morning, that even on a bad day, and you just fall to the level of your base system, you're going to have a much better day than if you just kind of throw your hands up and say, well, today's out the window. It's a bad day. Like nothing's going to happen today. Versus if this is like a system that you put in place and it's a habit that you have on a day-to-day basis, then you'll fall to the level of your system. So I feel like that's just a powerful thing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll leave this episode with that. So again, appreciate everyone listening. And I would just challenge you to try this just for a week. Try it in the morning. You take 10 to 15 minutes or less, or you could do more, but take 10 or 15 minutes and try this 1, 2, 3 method. Obviously, you can adapt it to your own circumstances, but I think there's a power in being intentional about your day and finding some kind of planning method like this. I use Greg because I think Greg's a lot smarter than I am. And I think there can be real power in your life for trying something like this. Yeah. So again, thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate all the support and excited to review more books in the coming weeks.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.